Quick little review. When we add two numbers, what name do we give to the answer? We divide two numbers. What name do we give to the answer? Quotient. If we subtract two numbers, and if we multiply two numbers, product. Good. Speaking of product, like I said, when we solve quadratic equations by factoring, we use what's called the zero product property. So if the product of two numbers is zero, then one of the at least one of the numbers must be zero. And we saw that. In fancy math notation, if the product of AB is zero, then A equals zero or B equals zero. And we already discovered how to solve by factoring. So what we have to do is actually, I'm going to add this. This might be a problem. Make sure one side of the equation, the left or right, is zero. After the other side of the equation, use the zero product property. Find the solutions. Which is what we did in that experience first thing. So let's just look at some examples where we have to apply our factoring skills and then the zero product property. This one is zero on one side of the equation. Factor the other side. Remember, you know 4 types of factoring. What type of factoring is this? It's not a trinomial. So that takes out the x squared trinomial and the ax squared trinomial. It's not a difference of squares. There's only one thing left. GCF. What can I take out? What is the other factor that remains? And don't forget that equals zero. We're not just factoring, we're using factoring to solve an equation. Now these are the factors. These are the factors. Make each one equal to zero. Well, this is easy. X equals 0. Make this one equal to 0. X plus 7 equals 0, therefore x is equal to. There's our two solutions. X can be 0, because 0 times this is 0. Or x can be -7, because -7 plus 7 makes this 0, times this is going to be also 0. So you got to be able to recognize, because you could do more than one, or you could do It's not just one type of factoring here. Okay, this one. We have 0 on one side. So we can go ahead and factor. What kind of factoring? X squared trinomial. What do we get? X minus 3 and x minus 3. So in this case, there's actually one answer, right? Because these two factors are the same. So you just take one of them and you say, okay, what value of x makes x minus 3 equal to 0? 3. You don't necessarily have to write this. You can go straight to the answer. You should be able to do the next one. And then maybe we'll do these together. Why? Because you keep putting those segments. Get this one? What's the factor form? 7 minus 2. Therefore, the answers are x equals -7 or x can equal 2. So notice this is a little different this time, right? Than you guys are used to solving equations where there's one answer. Quadratic equations most times have two answers. There are some times it may have one answer, like here. There are sometimes when it has no answers that we'll talk about later. All right, this one. What kind of factoring? Right. Do we know the first terms? Block. Now, next ones could be -5, +1, could be +5, -1. We could switch the 5 and 1.
+5. No, +1 minus 5.
+1 minus 5. Okay, let's double check that. -10x on the outside, +1x on the inside. Yep, that works. Good. Now notice this is a little bit different. So what value of x makes this 0? Well, remember, write that. What value of x makes 2x plus 1 equals 0? Now you got to solve it, and this one's a two-stepper, isn't it? Subtract 1 from both sides. Divide both sides by 2. So that one, you might want to show a little work for. This one, when there's nothing in front of the x, it's pretty straightforward. What's x? 5. So there's our two answers. Okay. All right. Let's look at a few more. Here we have another AX. Well, we've got 0 on one side, so we factor the other side. 5x and x for sure. So the numbers have to multiply to get +3, but notice in the original there's a negative in the middle. So both of them have to be negative. The question is it -3 and 1
or -1 and 3, -3?
-1, -3. Because that will give us -15x on the outside, -1x on the inside, which together make -16. Set each one equal to 0. So 5x minus 1 must work out to 0. Therefore, 5x is equal to +1, but I move the -1 over. Divide both sides by 5 and x equals 1 again. This one you should be able to get nicely. X equals 3.
What's wrong with the next one? Right. So what do I have to do to make it one side equals 0?
Plus 28 to both sides. So I'm going to get x squared plus 11x plus 28 equals 0. Now I'm ready to factor.
And it's a trinomial factor.
X and x. Plus 7 plus 4. Therefore, my answers, what makes this 0? -7 is an answer. What makes this 0? -4 is an answer. Oops. Correctly. These next two are a little interesting. So it's difference of squares. So we could factor it to x plus 5 times x minus 5. Therefore, our two solutions are -5 and +5, or plus minus 5.
Was there another way to do this one? Remember the very first lesson we did?
If there's no x term, what we could have done is get the x squared by itself by moving -25 over. And how do I find x? Be careful. Plus minus square root. And the plus minus square root is plus or minus 5. So notice
Either way gets us the same answer. Okay?
you may find in some questions you can't do it this way. You're going to have to do it this way.
Which we will actually see shortly.
This one sometimes throws some students because they think, like if I, let's say, let's say I do this. Go write this down. But I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to divide this by x to get x by itself. And then I'm going to divide this by x, and x equals 1.
Does that work? It does. But the only problem with that method is you haven't found all the answers. There's another number that works too.
Okay, so this is why we have to, when you see something like this, get everything to one side. So subtract x from both sides. And I get x squared minus x equals 0.
And now factor. What kind of factoring?
GCF. I can take an x out, and the other factor is x minus 1. And now set each factor equal to 0. Well, this factor, x equals 0, is an answer. And this one, x equals 1. So notice the 0 and 1 work. Which is why if you did it that other way, you're not going to get all the answers.
Like, you have to first x to any number. Just, x minus one, is
No, it's any number that it equals itself squared. There's only two numbers that equal themselves squared, 0 and 1. Because x can't be 2, because then 2 squared is 4. And they're not equal. X can't be 3, because of the other side would be 9. And they're not equal.
okay.
Yes? Good. What's wrong with this one? Right. How do you want to move this? Do you want to move this over here or these two over here? Keep this positive. Because if it's negative, that makes factoring negative. So let's bring those two over. So we're going to do two things. We're going to add 2x to both sides, and we're going to minus 8 at the same time. So we're going to minus 8, and we're going to add 2x to this side as well. That gives me 3x squared, and then write the x term next, because that's the order that we need to factor. Minus 8 equals 0. And now we're ready to factor. Ax squared trinomial. First terms, 3x and x. The numbers, there's choices here. Because it could be 4 and 2, 2 and 4, plus minus, minus plus, or it could be 8, 1, 1, 8. But remember, try the two numbers that are closer to each other first. So let's play around with 4 and 2. Minus 4 plus 2. Let's see if that works. 6x on the outside. Minus 4x on the inside. Together make plus 2x. That's a good one. Works. Set each one equal to 0. 3x minus 4 is equal to 0. Move the negative 4 over, so 3x equals 4. Therefore, x equals 4 over 3. What's the solution to this one? Negative 2.
Oh, this one. What do I do? Move the 7 over?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to subtract 7 from both sides. Say the last part.
Plus minus. No?
Yes. Because this is, it looks like a difference of squares, but this is not a perfect square, is it? So what was the first way I showed you guys how to solve? Get x squared by itself. by moving the negative 11 over, and then take the positive and negative square roots. So therefore, x is going to be the positive and negative square root of 11.
Remember, you know two types of solving equations, using the plus minus square root and factoring. Some you're going to have to use the plus minus square root, and this is an example of that.
This is the last one I want to look at. We'll finish the rest tomorrow.
Do we have 0 on one side? Well, what's wrong? Yeah, that negative.
How can I turn that negative into a positive?
Divide by
Yes. Yes.
divide everything by -1. And remember, if you're going to divide one thing, you got to divide everything.
So what's this divide -1? It's positive 3x squared. What's this divide -1? Negative 9x equals, what's 0 divide -1? Still 0.
That's much easier to deal with. It's not a trinomial.
It's not a difference of squares. It's got to be a GCF. What can I take out? The x, and I'm left with minus 3. Therefore, one of my answers will be when 3x is equal to 0. Well, 3 times what is 0? 10. X is 0. And what's this one? X is 3. That would make that is 0.
Okay.
So for Monday,